I guess while we talk about while I update the news ticker with all the things, I guess we can get started with the episode proper. Um,
Well, with the main topic, AX.
yeah. So in the last 2 weeks, Hannah and I both went to conventions. Hannah went to Anime Expo over in LA, which looked like the most terrifying experience ever because of how many people there were. And I went to a much smaller show. I went to SMASH, the Sydney Manga and Anime Show, last weekend, and got to see a few VTubers there. While I write the ticker, Hannah, do you want to talk me through how your AX experience was? What you got up to and the random things you saw?
Okay, so I will say that Anime Expo very much is like they will do whatever they want because they are just the largest guys in town. And so what makes Anime Expo great is everything that is planned at Anime Expo, despite how Anime Expo kind of plans everything. Like the convention staff doesn't really help with anything, but they will also not impede on anything either. Which is to say, like, it's an amazing convention in spite of SPJA.
Yeah. And
It is. Mhm.
and like you mentioned, like it was actually like pretty smooth running. Like despite like the massive people, like things ran on time and there was enough events and all that kind of thing.
I think they took the fear and terror of somebody seriously getting injured strongly enough this year that all the lines were not terrible, and that if there were issues with like lines and whatever, it was all inside the building. It wasn't outside. Because there have been many times when like people would wait in 105. Wait, what is this in Celsius? 110 F to Celsius.
It's like 44, 43?
Yeah. It's like 43
Yeah.
Celsius. And you'd have to wait in line for like 5 hours to get into the building, which is terrifying, right?
Yeah.
But I guess they took it seriously enough that they were just like, we're going to make this the smoothest entry process possible. It's that they didn't need to because it was ADL weekend and it was so nice. I want to go back.
What did you kind of get up to yourself? Like what kind of parts of the convention did you go to? What did you enjoy the most? What didn't you like the most? Give me the specific examples.
Okay, so remember how so we were talking about conventions, right? And when you went to Smash, I think it was a very different experience. But at Anime Expo, and this is not just at Anime Expo, this is across the United States, there is a real fight over whether or not VTubers should be invited as guests. Which is to say that, like, AX decided to deal with this by saying, hey, we know that VTubers want to come, but we will all put you in a corner. It's a very nice corner, to be frank.
But
right?
it is a corner.
Yes, it is a corner of the convention hall, but this made, like, traveling a lot easier because basically all of the VShoujo panels, the big NIJISANJI panel, and all of the other major panels for all VTubers were all in one room. And so all of the crowding happened in this one room, which was very sad if you couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it meant that all of the tech testing and stuff could all happen all at once. So every panel happened on time. I was actually very shocked about this. And also, AnyColor, if you're listening, I saw that you guys were using a Noctix sign, and it's a Noctix sign with all 5 of them, right? Not just the one with Yugo, like, cut out of it. It's not the updated one. It was, like, all 5 of them, and they were interviewing fans. And all of us noticed, okay?
And everyone was like, oh my god.
Yeah, we were like, wait, Yugo? But yeah, it was like really nice too because there were some very yeah, first off, you go forever. And also Usan is beast. But
Yep.
also like it was really nice that I had a series. I was supposed to have 4 concerts. I only went to 3 because I was very hungry on Saturday. But
Good excuses ever.
I know, right? But like there were a bunch of indie, like I mean very, very indie VTubers holding performances at AX. Which first off was amazing. I really enjoyed it. But also somehow the indie VTuber concert ended up being the one that I thought was actually the best one. Personally because like the stage usage was the best.
For the people
is...
who are lost, I have brought up photos of it here because
Yes.
I knew Hannah was just about to start talking for it, so I grabbed the photos that they sent me.
Thank you! But yeah, so there was a live Saturday night. First it was Tacitly, and then it was Nonstop V. And for some reason, nobody talked about this on Twitter, except for like the people, not the VTubers in Nonstop V. They're like 15 fans who are watching from Japan, were tweeting about it.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking screenshots. I love you guys. But it was really nice because a separate company was actually like programming the entire live, and I thought it was really great. So that was concert day 1. Then day 2 had Lazulite, and then Hololive, which I will get into more. But like, yeah, it was a weekend full of VTubers. You should talk about your experience though.
Yeah. Yeah, Smash for me, I'll bring up my little article that I wrote, because I wrote an article for VTuber News Drop about it. Smash was interesting because unlike AX, we actually had official Hololive presence. We didn't just have Yogo walking up onto the steps and everyone losing their collective minds. Ollie and Rainy came.
You didn't have Vox and Shoto
God,
discreetly, but not discreetly traveling through. Who the hell let them do this?
I love my favorite photo is the one that Uki posted today, where it was like hold on, I have to pull it up now. Uki.
My friends and I were discussing like where the hell they had met up, and I was like, it can't be AX. I refuse to believe that their managers signed up on them going to Anime Expo, and it was Anime Expo. Oh my god, why?
This tweet sent me with we had a nice cafe date, he got me flowers, and then some other stuff happened too, and it's just Uki groping Shoto's chest.
Just by the way, the best VTuber trend this entire year is the one where like very buff, like mask presenting VTuber fans of usually it's like Uki and Shoto
I know
the chef's kiss.
The chef's kiss, yeah, with the models.
And Uki is just eating this up.
Uki is winning. He is definitively winning.
Uki has won in all sorts of ways, which we will get into more.
Yes.
In a little bit.
We do plan on talking about.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, no, Smash was interesting. Like, it was not the 4-day con like AX. It's only 2 days in Sydney. Smash is basically the only convention we have now in Australia that's like catered towards anime, like major convention that we have catered towards anime content. That kind of has the pull to attract guests, like international guests. Because we lost MadFest and then we lost Crunchyroll Expo, and so now we only have this. We do have smaller like local ones, so it was kind of interesting because this was my first time at Smash, so I don't have a reference point for how it was before. It was honestly pretty cool. Like, the convention itself was really, really well planned out. Like, basically everything ran on time except for like the last panel being like 15 minutes delayed, but that was like it. But everything else ran to like on a metronome, which was really good. The artist alley was packed. There was like 260 artists, which is the biggest that I have ever gone to. And I'm sure that AX had more, but like 260 is a lot. I spent a lot of money. Less than I usually do at cons, but shout out to Mika. I bought Mika a bunch of Ike Everland merch. So
nice.
Because I knew he would want some. So I went to all of the NIJISANJI fan artists and bought Ike merch. But no, like Ollie and Rainy did like panels. Like they had like the trivia panel that they like Hololive likes touring with, where they can like quiz the audience and like do the trivia things. It's a pretty common thing. Rainy won, surprisingly. I mean, the audience backed Rainy, but also like Ollie was definitely winning for the most part until the final question. Then like Ollie also did a panel with her VTuber artist Lamb, because Lamb was there in person, which was very cool for the crowd. He also did like some quick drawings, like he was like prompted to like draw like the Sydney Opera House and Tim Tams and those kinds of things, and then he had like 30 seconds to draw them all. And it was very funny just like listening to him like mutter back like specific words while he's trying to focus. So he's drawing like a Tim Tam. He's like going like Tim Tam, Tim Tam, Tim Tam, Tim Tam, Tim Tam. So yeah, that was Hololive. Hololive came on Sunday. Then on Saturday we had Prison Project, where they also had two panels, where they had a trivia panel with that was a little bit more like focused on the talents themselves. So like all four of the Australian Prison Project, all four of the Down Under Prison Project, because Lana's not Australian, came out.
We're gonna get that right. Huh?
Yeah, including Nana Asteria, who like debuted for Prison Project one day before the con. Like the day before the con, Nana debuted as part of the Gen 7 adoption group that Prison Project had, where they also got Emma Omiya and Mako Sameshima, and they did like a trivia panel where Nana won, and apparently has now got the ability to hijack Ludo and Sarah's Twitter accounts. I'm waiting to see how that goes. And then they also did like a concert thing. And while they were in like a significantly smaller room compared to Hololive, they managed to like actually fill out the concert. So like I've got a photo here up on screen now. They actually filled up this room. I had to like quickly run to the front after this photo was taken to actually go take my seat, because I got ushered into a seat earlier. But like they filled out this room, and like, you know, there was like 100 odd people in there, which was nice. The Hololive panel on Sunday to close the show probably had about 1,000 people in it, I reckon.
That's like, expected, I guess.
But that's like expected, right? But it was very cool to see like people turn out for Prison Project, which is an agency that not a lot of like not your casual VTuber fan will know. And they were just happy to be like, sure, oh, there's a VTuber, let's go check them out. And you could hear that when we were like in the venue, like people were talking about them, which is cool. No NIJISANJI official presence, but like they had a bunch of cosplayers, and they had a fan cosplay panel where like people dressed up as like XLA, and then like did like a fan panel, which I didn't get to go to, but apparently it was kind of cool. There was a Nina cosplayer, which I'll pull up the full photo of. Of course. Which is...
I actually put in a request to the XLA cosplay panel to be like, hey, I know I'm not going to be there, but like, could you guys do me a huge favor and just make sure you guys make fun of Hex during the panel, please?
I don't know if they followed through on that. I don't know. Because I hope they did. But yeah, no, there was NIJISANJI had like the biggest cosplay presence of the weekend. Which is quite interesting. People. Yeah. They had like a massive fan meetup and everything. It was very cool. I got to see bits of the fan meetup. Hololive, there wasn't a lot of Hololive cosplayers. I saw more, I saw like a couple of Suicide cosplayers. There's this one guy who comes in like the casual Kali outfit always. And like you see him at every anime convention in Australia. I saw him at CRX last year, and I've seen him at other cons. Like people say, he just comes like dressed up as Kali, and he is so painful. Like it is always the same guy, and you can really spot him easily in a crowd. He's good vibes though. Like he got up onto the Hololive trivia panel, and he was like pretty chill. And then there's obviously like a couple of Suicide cosplayers and a couple of Guro cosplayers, but it was mostly NIJISANJI. Shout out to my friend Rai for, I guess, stepping on me while cosplaying Solan.
Yeah.
It wasn't my idea,
Always
okay?
the best.
They were like, what pose should we do? And then they said, I know, I'm going to step on you. And then they stepped on me. Also, Mario, there was not a Zion cosplay for XLA. So yeah, also my haircut looking mighty fine in that photo, by the way. That is a fresh cut. You can see the tats as well. But no, Rise
Your
cosplay was
friend
awesome.
made a great Solen.
Yeah, no, they like handmade Solen's claw out of like foam.
Oh my gosh.
Which was awesome. Like I was like watching them like do it across like the weeks before Smash. And they did great. So they came as like regular Solen on day one, just like regular Solen outfit, and then like the maid Solen from the recent like Butler voice pack. They did that for day two, which was very funny.
AKA every Dragoon's favorite voice pack for the past, I don't know how many years. The wait was worth it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was good fun, and it also led to a funny picture of me getting stepped on at a con, which now means we're equal because you got stepped on by Leona.
Yeah. Being stepped on by Oshi.
And then like the artist alley, there was like a ton of Hololive stuff. It was like mostly Hololive and NIJISANJI. I saw like a couple of Iron Mouse stickers. I saw a Vebe sticker. And then I also saw like I also saw a Bow Charm. So like there was a few things. My two favorite ones though, there was like a Hololive pin gacha at one of the booths, and I did one on both days. I got Iris and Mume. And Iris now lives on my work lanyard. And then there was also a fanzine, which is, I haven't seen a VTuber fanzine at an Australian convention yet. And this was like, these guys had drawn 24 like different pages of like Hololive Sneaker is what it's called. And it was just like, you know, it's like that kind of techwear style of drawings focusing on the sneakers and stuff. And yeah, it was very cool, and they sold out, and they were very nice, chill people. So spot these guys at the next con, Goey, Kat, and Chameleon. Yeah. They were cool, very cool fan sign, and they did great work. I know it's just, I know that I'm not pronouncing it correctly. I'm gonna pronounce it my way. I pronounce things my way. It is, yeah, but yeah, no, that was Smash. Like, that's just the run through of Smash. I got to meet a few VTubers that I had interviewed before, which was very cool. Shout out to Wasipyon, or Wasi as he's more known, is I interviewed him for an article last year when I was talking about VTubers and music, and I actually got to meet him on the weekend because he was running around. Very, very chill guy, very awesome dude. But yeah, that was my Smash. The one thing I'm really regretting is that I didn't get one of those like cute VTuber circle photos, like, you know, when everyone pulls out their model on their phone. I didn't get one of those.
Oh my gosh, you really should have.
I know,
with
but
all the Australians.
But apparently there was a VTuber meetup and I missed it, so I didn't like see, like, I only saw it like after the fact, where like there was like a dozen VTubers who like met up and like went for K-barbecue. I was like, damn, I missed my opportunity.
No.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all. There's always next year. There's always other cons. So I guess we'll see.
It's so interesting to kind of see everyone at cons again, because your con experience was like very VTuber dominated, whereas like mine was extremely like only this one corner was allowed to be VTubers, and everywhere else was just anime, which is like, there's good and bad to both approaches, I think.
Yeah. Whereas like Smash is very much like it's everything mixed together. Which is like fine, I guess. Like the panel, like it's not like just like one specific area. It's just like the entire con is just on one show floor, and then the panels are like in a separate area. And then there was also like a butler cafe that I didn't get the chance to go to. Which definitely screamed Hanako. Like I could see like going like Hanako would be like, yeah, book out the butler cafe.
Okay, are there performances though?
I don't know. I
This
didn't
is
go
a
up
very,
there, but
very
I think there was.
If there are, like, I'm usually okay. So I'm like Pomu in this sense. If there's a lot of performances, I'm there, right? This is why I was very disappointed. So during the Hololive performance, my friends and I were at a box, and um, this gave like we were sitting right behind Yago,
Yeah.
and I think we gave Yago the misperception, the misconception. Yago and like some of the people in my box that like um Western VTuber fans are very, very good at uh calls. They are
Yep.
not. Yo, if you are a Hololive fan and you don't know the calls to SSS, I need to have a word with you.
I mean,
Because like of all the songs, how could you not know this one?
people would. I suspect it would have been like people would have just been happy to attend. I don't know. Like, is there a difference in like fandom between the two languages? Maybe.
Possibly, yeah.
NA
Wow,
was a mistake.
Kevy, okay. Yes, you JP elitist. Kevy was with me in the booth, and we were both really, really sad that like no one knew the freaking calls to Shiny Story, but then at the same time, like literally 3 hours before, NIJISANJI did Diamond City Lights, and that was like the loudest Karen I have ever heard in my entire life.
I mean, that's to be expected, I think. And also, you're
That's
biased here.
true. I am biased. I am biased. I will say though, of the three lives, I enjoyed every single one of them, but I will rate Nijisanji's as like production-wise. I actually thought it was the lowest because it was very obvious that they were dancing in front of like a black screen, and it was the three of them dancing. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for Hololive because they credited like a bunch of idols at the end, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of smart. If your talents don't know how to dance, like you're animating a 3D, who cares? But when it came to like the actual production of the live, I thought Niji-sanji's was definitely the weakest. It was also very obvious that it was pre-recorded, so I was like, okay. But it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Hololive one was second. There were a couple of issues, I think, with how they used the stage, but it was fun. It was fun. I mean, watching Kebby be a dirty DD in person was like very, very, very funny because like we were both in the booth together. He's a Corona Discord admin who was wearing a Guargura shirt, screaming his head off to Toa. To Fauna, who was covering Toa, and then trying to say that he was not DD.
That's his cope.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know where we draw the line, but that's clearly a DD moment, right?
Yeah. Before we move on to like the actual news things of the podcast, I want to touch on one thing in terms of VTubers at conventions. With VTubers at conventions now being kind of like the norm for anime events, what do you think can be improved on? What do you think is good? And do you see like the short-term future of anime conventions just being VTuber conventions? Because that's kind of like the direction it feels like it's going.
So I think from the cons that I go to, it's always a fight to get VTubers invited, right? So like from my perspective, it's a very clear no. That like it's an uphill battle for us to get VTubers invited to anything. Like should they actually get invited to something, there's always cause or celebration. So at least in the United States, it's gonna stay a no until people change their mind. I will not name and shame this convention. However, I will say that Hololive actually waited out on a particular East Coast convention that shall not be named, in order to do their meet and greet. And 2 weeks before the actual date, Hololive was just like, you know what, we can't wait any longer. If you guys really don't want to do this, we're just going to do our meet and greet at another event. So that is how much, like, some of these cons do not want VTubers at their events. So I won't.
Is that just is that like a VTuber specific thing, or is that just con organizer laziness?
It's not con organizer laziness as much as it is cons refusing to admit that VTubers are more than just a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And so I want to say, at least for the United States, like, that's where we're at.
There's another element of this, because I was speaking to a VTuber manager friend of mine, and they said a lot of the VTubers who are attending cons, and they are big draw cards for these cons. Like, the one that I always go back to is Crunchyroll Expo last year in Australia, where, like, they were kind of struggling to sell tickets. They announced that they're sending Bay and Kali, and the tickets instantly sell out after that. Like, these VTubers have big draw cards, and while, like, I think the agencies like Hololive, VShojo, NIJISANJI, and, like, Prism Project would, like, charge for, like, a appearance fee, a lot of the smaller indie VTubers, or a lot of the bigger indie VTubers even, aren't charging appearance fees at these conventions. Which is alarming for me, because how much, like, they generate sales and VTubers go get that bag. But I also see, like, a future where VTubers do become a mainstay of at least the guest side of conventions, because you can it is more economical. Like, if you are a con organizer, all you have to do is ensure that your convention has suitable enough internet, which, as we learned at Offkai this year, is a taller order than some would think. But if you have suitable internet connection, you can get a VTuber in, pay them their appearance fee, not have to worry about flying them out like a voice actor, for example, like I say, and, like, fly them out, put them up in a hotel, maybe cover some expenses, then pay for their appearance fee on top. With VTubers, you just have to ensure that they can get a good connection to the event and pay their appearance fee, and maybe, like, some other miscellaneous fees if they have, like, an on-ground presence, for example. But I see that as being the future, at least in the short term. In, like, the next 2 to 3 years, people will start to realize that potential of having VTuber guests and more influencer-style guests as well, because conventions now aren't selling out on the basis of getting a VA in, whether they're a Japanese VA or an English dub VA. They're not selling out on that. They're selling out by getting influencers in, whether they be VTubers or other anime-adjacent content creators, because that is where their audience is at. So
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting in how the dynamic of conventions has changed in the last few years. And I've even seen that in pop culture conventions, more broader pop culture conventions as well, where big name actors aren't necessarily always the biggest draw card anymore.
I certainly think that's true. I hope it doesn't go too much in one direction, because I definitely see kind of like a bad path going down there.
Yeah.
But I would say that, like, okay, so I think this is a very US specific thing. I don't know the intricacies of visa law in other countries, but I do know for the United States, we are a fucking pain in the ass when it comes to immigration law.
Yeah.
So right now, if you wanted to fly in anybody from anywhere outside of who is not an American citizen to do work at an American event, you have to pay $2,000 per attendee.
Yeah.
I think. That's the official stance. The majority, I'm not gonna say like the grand majority, but a good chunk of VTubers are American citizens, right? Like, most of Myth, lots of NIJISANJI members. So, like, for our fees, this makes for very, very good business.
Yeah. And
so that is the one saving grace for us.
Yeah. And I mean, it does apply to Australia a little bit as well, where we have performance visas, right? We have entertainer visas where people have to apply, and I think it's like $400, $500 AUD to, like, get a guest on a performance visa if you're going to pay them in Australia for like their attendance fees.
That's so cheap. Why? This is unfair.
How many conventions actually follow these rules? I don't actually know. Because, and the reason I say this is, when I was traveling as a journalist a lot more, right, and I was going to conventions and stuff and earning money overseas, you just go in and say you're there for a convention on like just a regular tourist visa, and they would all be okay. There was no issues. Even though, and I wonder if it's like a structure of the pay or like some of those other things, but you can basically just breeze by and be like, yeah, I'm just here to visit a convention. And then they'll be like, okay. And there's no issues with that. It might be stricter now, but that was what it was for me. And so even though I was earning money at some of these events, you know, I didn't have to get like an exorbitant visa. That would, like, the visa would definitely like also outweigh any money that I would have earned from the event, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Food for thought there in terms of how many conventions actually follow the visa rules as well. But and that's both in America and here in Australia, because I would actually very much question if they all do. Especially if it's like...
People get caught. Like, nowadays, I think they specifically train people on how to catch people at the border, being like, see this day, you ask everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how that would like evolve. Anyways, we spent like 40 minutes talking about conventions. And while it's like all
convention talk,
and while it's all like VTuber adjacent, we could just like dive into some actual proper VTuber news that has happened this week. The first big discussion point that I wanted to bring up, and we might not like harp on about this for too long, is Idol Corp keeps breaking milestones in the EN VTubing space. So Yuko Urei and Rim Penrose both broke major milestones on YouTube now. So Yuko Urei is now 200k, Rim Penrose is now 500k. There you go, there's the Yoshi. And the question this makes me beg is Idol Corp about to break into the colloquial VTuber top 3, which is Hololive, NIJISANJI, and VTuber? Because when you have someone like Rim Penrose breaking 500k on YouTube, and then you have other people in the agency actually pulling their own numbers up as well, it does go to question like, are they now getting to the size of someone like VTuber, who has like their one big member in like Iron Mouse, but then the rest of the talents are all lurking at about like half the follower count and that kind of thing. It's kind of got the same makeup, but the numbers are certainly getting there for Idol. And so I wanted to pose that question to you. Where do you think Idol sits now in the VTuber agency ladder?
I would definitely say, like, to a very specific degree, I think Idol feels like a VSPO to me. Where it's... VSPO is kind of like, in Japan, that is the third one. It's not VShojo, it's VSPO.
Yeah. And
you have all their members hovering around, like, I forget what it is. It's like 500k.
Yep.
But it's great because I don't think we're gonna be trapped at that. There's only 3 big agencies and everybody else is kind of playing second fiddle anymore.
Yeah.
It's very much like, hey, like, we now can actually grow other people who are just as big and just as important. And it's not just these 2 anymore, kind of thing.
Do you think that now, like, Idol is in the AND space, like, the best of the rest? Because I know this is a spot that, like, people have talked about, like, a Prism project taking up, given they've got the SMEJ backing. Or originally it was Phase Connect, because they've been around for much longer, bearing in mind that Idol as an agency has been around for, what, a year now? Less than?
Barely?
Yeah, less than a year, I think. Like, where do you, like... Are they now just the best of the rest? And how do you think they got there, if so?
I really think it's kind of more of a they managed to do really well with the opportunities that they got, because we were just talking about how, like, with Idol, they really took advantage of the shorts and marketing features of YouTube very well. They were able to like capitalize on it with their actual funding, and it was super great. And so we're just seeing the return on investment from that. Hopefully this continues and it's not just Rin, but like everybody else too. Yeah, like their marketing game was so strong.
They were the first,
so
actually that's true. They were the first VTuber agency to really leverage YouTube ads.
Yeah, exactly. And like that is the kind of initiative we need to see from everybody else.
Yeah.
But hopefully this tells people like the barrier is not unbreachable. Like there are definitely other ways that they can climb into that, you know, that mystical like top 3 ground.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to the top 3 forever. Because I think that's the story of this year, right? Vispo actually beat NIJISANJI in terms of average subscriber count. For Japan, I want to say like in March. Then you had Rin breaking into.
That's also, that would also be partially the fact that NIJISANJI has 1 billion VTubers.
Yeah, that's true. But then, like, Vispo also has like 40, so it's not too far.
But that makes them comparable to Hololive JP, like in terms of size.
Yeah.
Not like NIJISANJI is then on another scale further. But continue making your point because it is true.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to point out that distinction.
Yeah, like 150 people at like 16. What is it? What did they say? Like 350,000 is not necessarily the same as like, you know, 30 people at 500, but still, it's still good. Like we're still seeing a lot of these other agencies grow. When you saw Twitch's like watch hours, it was more than half Korean VTubers.
Yes, actually that's very true when in their last one. And a lot of them were Isuge, right?
Yeah, like some of them were definitely like Isidol, but like even though you had all the Isuge people, you also had a bunch of like indies actually popping up out of nowhere too.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, oh, my people are weebs.
And also, this is all happening at a time where VTuber growth is happening on these platforms, and view numbers are going up on these platforms. And I would say Twitch is a yes. I think YouTube's numbers are still going up, but Twitch's watch hours have actually declined recently. So like
interesting.
So like the watch hours on the platform have declined and have been in decline for like 6 months, and before like any of the drama, like 6 to 9 months, it's been in decline because of and my reasoning for it is
people are going out.
Yeah, COVID things, right? And like Twitch had the huge spike, and now it's like plateauing. But despite all of that, VTuber specific watch hours on the platform are only continuing to increase. So it means that, you know, the VTuber market share is growing. And when the VTuber market share grows, it means that you can functionally more agencies can occupy those top spots. More indies can get a share of the pie. The share of the pie goes larger. And more people can make a living out of full-time content creation. Because that is true. There are a lot of VTubers who, even though there is this tech winter, economic downturn, less spending on advertising, less luxurious spending, there are still VTubers who are going full-time and finding success with it.
Mm-hmm. And it's only going to go up from here because, I mean, as much as, like, we all saw that one viral tweet of, I think it was a Thai VTuber covering Fujikaze, and I thought it was a pretty decent one. People were, like, making fun of them, unfortunately. It seemed like, who is this guy? Like, why are they trying to beat Hatsune Miku? And I'm just like, that's not the point.
Yeah. Far from it.
Yeah.
But to answer this section definitively, is there a chance that Idol becomes a bigger, like a bigger force than, say, V-Shoujo in the West?
I don't know. It's going to be a fight. I actually think it's going to turn more into a 4-way fight than anything else. Where like you have a bunch of people kind of duking it out all at that top level, and everyone else is just like, okay, like we're here too.
Yeah. I think it really depends on Idol EN too. Like pretty much is like,
yeah.
Obviously they debuted what, 2 months ago now, I think. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
If Idol EN2 is able to make the same splash as Idol EN1, then, or like even like a similar size splash. It doesn't even have to be like, not all of them have to be Rin, right? They don't have to be as big as Rin. But as long as they can keep up with a similar trajectory of growth, they will definitely outmuscle VShojo. Because VShojo as an agency, right now is an agency that I see is all talk and no show. Where like they've got like, you've always got people like, and bless IMOuse for saying this, right? Like IMOuse always says there's like big things in the pipeline for VShojo, and they're doing stuff with like animations and that kind of thing, but they don't have the same sticking power anymore. And it's kind of coming to the point where the talk is cheap and people aren't buying the same narrative as they once were. And I think if they can't, I guess, recover from their losses earlier this year with at least some sort of semblance of, no, we're sticking around in the long run, we've got this growth strategy, we plan on either investing in our current VTubers or growing the base that we have, then I think it's going to get really touch and go for them.
Yeah. And to be quite frank, I actually see that for everyone, right? I think NIJISANJI has always kind of been on the defensive, more so than everybody else, but obviously, like, they've been having a rough year. Crisis is actually doing pretty decently. I think you ran the numbers, and it was like a slight drop, right?
Yeah. So Crisis, I can pull up my tweet on this. So Crisis, Summit, thank you so much for the, I should say native, for the resub. So Crisis had the highest average peak concurrent viewer count for their debuts compared to the other Niji Heroes groups, because it's a joint debut between JP and EN. And they occupied spots 2, 3, and 4 on the list of individual VTubers in that group, because one of the JP VTubers was very big in VTA and then made a huge splash. But overall, Crysis's debut numbers were some of the lowest since Luxium. In fact, I think it was the lowest since Luxium.
Yeah.
In terms of debuts. Which is, I don't think it's necessarily like a concerning thing, because it's still big. The more. Pardon?
What was it? Like 30,000?
For
their numbers.
So Crisis was 40k. Like Crisis average across the board was like 40k. And that hadn't been seen since Luxium, because Luxium was like 25k, or like 25k, but they popped off afterwards, and then people then started just watching all the other debuts. So then people went out for Noctix, and then they went out for Aluna, and then they went out for XLA. But since then, it's always been like a steady decline.
Yeah, just like a little bit each time, but it's still noticeable.
It's a noticeable amount, and that's fine. I wonder if this is the perfect segue to then start talking about the next topic, because I think this has something to do with like NIJISANJI's PR problem that they have in the EN space right now. And this only speaks for the EN.
I was gonna say
this only like speaks for the EN livers, right? But like, I think it does play into that.
I was actually gonna say, I was gonna bring up Holo Gen 3.
Oh, you want to do that? You want to do that first?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's do that first.
I'm gonna be very as people might have noticed at the end of the concert for Hololive, they suddenly had just like this short clip playing. And
before you go any further, this is the clip in question.
Yeah. I thought that was Kobo laughing. I'm not even joking.
So yeah, there you go.
I seriously thought that was Kobo.
And like people have been like breaking this down where it's like you can kind of see like the outline of like the E and the N on the left, and then like there's 3 in Roman numerals like with the 3 lines. So it's like people have been like really reading into it. But yeah, so this was the teaser shown. Continue your story.
Yeah, so the thing is, right? It's going to be really interesting to see where Holo Gen 3's debut numbers end up.
Yeah.
So, Council did pretty well. I wanna say this as like politely as possible. Also because I really like Bae. So bias.
Yeah.
Council is not Myth, right? And Myth was very special from the get-go for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to see like a slight decline in numbers. The question is how much?
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm wondering whether or not like we're going to see a massive decline or just like a steady decline, because it's a question of like what are Hololive's numbers now and what do they look like in 2023, because nobody has any idea. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Tempest debuts. Tempest. Hololive really has a misogyny problem, and it really shows.
Yeah.
Whenever we talk about Tempest.
Yeah.
So I don't view Tempest as particularly representative. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
There's a reason why all the guys still struggle at around like 200K.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone is going to break out of that range anytime soon, which is really sad because I actually really like all of them.
Which you have prompted in my mind. Maybe I should go and look at the sub, like the general growth trajectory, projected growth trajectory of like the 2 major agencies, because I've done it for Niji, but I haven't done it for Holo.
Yeah.
But I think like Holo Myth was like right place, right time with the right personalities. And they couldn't capture the same magic with Council. At least long term. And while like bits of Council have like made names for themselves, I think Bae most notably, the others I feel exist in their own bubble. And I feel like Hololive itself exists in its own bubble to its hindrance in the EN space. Events like Connect the World and the recent, I still say recent because it was only 6 months ago, when they started collabing with Niji and they started being more open with collabs with other agencies, did help. But what hasn't helped is the fact that Holo talents have not been streaming. Myth has barely been streaming in the last 6 months.
Barely streams though.
No.
As a Luxium fan, I am here to point out that Mista has not streamed regularly in 5 months.
But they are still more active online than Myth is.
That's true.
Because right now, Myth is like, well, Ina like went on hiatus, but then came back and has like streamed pretty consistently. Kiara is always reliable for a stream, but Kali has been very busy. Gura has been in and out of hiatus. And Ame has been like traveling, and before that was also inconsistent with stream schedule. So it's like Myth hasn't been streaming, and then on the Council side of things is they haven't been it feels like they haven't been tapping into a new audience or like a broader audience. It's just like in their own little bubble. So I think there is like a little bit of an issue where like Hololive kind of exists and it does really well in its own little bubble, but that bubble, like, there's only so much you can do in that ceiling. Where you see like NIJISANJI's talents, I guess, like kind of get a little bit higher on average, especially across both genders is what you see, or like both forms of presentation is more what I should say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's hard to talk about Hololive in this way because they're all still ridiculously super successful. And events like Connect the World, which I've just brought up my article regarding it, show that they have a massive draw. Where they can pack out the YouTube theater, sell like every seat in the house, and then also sell tens of thousands of online streaming tickets. Like they have massive amounts of draw still, and people will still turn out for these events, and they still have a very generous base. But there is always this little quirk about Hololive, especially Hololive EM, where I'm like, they feel so distant from the rest of the VTubing space that it is really hard to quantify their impact.
Yeah, like, okay, so I actually think it's because as streamers, I personally actually think Council is stronger. And it's because Council was a bunch of, like, Twitch streamers before they became, like, Hololive content creators.
Yep.
And it's the same for NIJISANJI, where they were all on Twitch before they joined a corporation, and that helps a lot.
Whereas most of Myth weren't.
Yeah, like, the majority of Myth were somewhere else in the internet ecosystem, but it certainly was not...
Only one was a dedicated streamer.
Yeah, and that was Ame.
Yeah, Ame.
But that's why Ame's my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm biased. I'm always biased.
What do you then hope happens with Hololive Gen 3? Because it's been a long time coming. It's been a very long time coming. And even if that teaser was not a teaser for Gen 3, which it definitely was, guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely some sort of teaser for an upcoming debut.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's Gen 3, whether it's a standalone like Iris. What do you think needs to happen for Holo Gen 3? Or do you think that they're just fine going on in the same way they have been going on?
So there's been a very disturbing trend that I've personally noticed, and it's something that so I called out Kepi before. He's like a Coronet admin, but he's not the only one who's told me this. There's been a very disturbing trend with Hololive where we're seeing a huge uptick in misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is. Which is exactly why my friends and I were just like, yo, it would be so funny if stars literally were to perform in the middle of all of this. Because that, first off, that would cause the biggest freak out since ever, right? But also, like, have some balls and call out the worst parts of your fan base, right? So
Fauna did it recently.
Yeah, but like Fauna alone is not going to be able to do it. This has to be, like it has to be a corporate move, and so I really want to see an integrated wave. I know it's not going to happen, but I feel like that is the best way to do it.
It's never happened in Holo. And I don't think it ever will.
No, I know.
I don't think it ever will because they treat Hololive and Holostars as two separate brands. That's the only reason why I would do it, because they're very clear on that messaging where it is like Hololive is one group, Holostars is another group, and they are separate. It's like same parent company, different groups.
Which is so frustrating.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why?
Especially after we've seen the success of Aluna and XLA, where people were like, "Oh, you can do this," and it actually works out pretty okay, and people actually like it.
Yeah, like if you look at who succeeded from both ways, right? In Aluna, the standout success is 100% the third years, right? Scarlet and Ren, where you have Ren literally killing it in terms of sub count. Yeah. He is like miles ahead, but you have Scarlet literally raking in super chats like hand over fist, right?
And also just like completely setting discourse. Her and Kyo like completely set discourse.
Which is cute. It's adorable. I love them, right?
Yeah.
I tell all of my Honey Bunny fans, like, you guys would love Scarlet. And they absolutely do, right? And the fact that, like, she openly thirsts after other content creators, I'm calling her out because we are we're two of kind, right? I can smell my own kind.
I can say this
But,
because
like,
I am this.
yes, exactly. Like, we are the same person, Scarlett. But, like, it's great, and I really hope they find a way to kind of, like, do the same thing for Hololive, because they need to get this problem under control. It is literally turning a lot of the chats way more toxic than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's super sad. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, I think to bring it back and maybe give Hololive a little bit of credence is I think misogyny is a streaming-wide problem. It is not a exclusively to a single agency problem. And this kind of crops up as well when we talk about the tweet that went around the grounds this week about
Oh yeah.
So to paraphrase here, the tweet claimed that female VTubers instantly get 10,000 followers on debut, whereas male VTubers are struggling. And it's a whole play on the male VTubers, woe is me, we don't get any kind of fortune in VTubing kind of trope, which we have spoken about on this show before. And to summarize our thoughts on it, that is completely bullshit. Where male VTubers are still successful. They may be less successful than female counterparts, but streaming as a whole is still a male-dominated industry, and VTubing just happens to be the one subset of it that is not male-dominated. On that point, the whole misogyny thing is not an exclusive problem to Hololive. It happens in NIJISANJI as well. It happens with indies. It happens in other agencies. But I guess what the issue is Hololive, for better and for worse, have much tighter lips, and they will keep to a script a little bit more. They will not say the controversial things out loud, and if they do, it is newsworthy. Like Fauna's recent stuff about her relationship with her viewers and the kind of harassment in the spaces. But they will keep more to the script. Whereas you'll then have someone like Uki doing a $30,000 charity stream for Human Rights Watch, which is a whole different kettle of fish and not something that you would ever dream of happening in Hololive. But the whole misogyny thing for me is streaming viewers, and VTubing is made up of two fan bases which have had issues with conduct in women. One of them is the anime fan base. The second one is the broadest streaming fan base. Your kind of XQC lovers, Ms. Kith lovers, the guys who have lived on Twitch and enjoyed that kind of streaming content. A lot of that streaming content is rooted in some sort of patriarchal hierarchy, where when the Twitch leak happened in 2021, all of the 100 top streamers on Twitch were men in terms of earnings.
Oh yeah.
And even though and the ceiling for female streamers, even the likes of Pokemon and Amaranth, is much lower. And it's very hard to break.
They were like 250 or something.
They were just out. No, they were just outside the top 100. They were close, but just outside. But you know, that goes to show how male-dominated this space is, and I guess how geared content is towards the male audience. VTubing is the only space where the kind of gender norms are flipped, where female streamers lead the way, but it's still for a predominantly male audience. Whereas in regular streaming, it is male content creators making content for male viewers. And female content creators who make content for female viewers, or anyone who makes content for female viewers, is usually chastised for it, is usually harassed more. And that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But to give Hololive a little bit of credence here, that is a industry-wide problem. They can still functionally change some things on their end, but it is still an industry-wide problem. And there's only so much they can move the needle.
I am hesitant to give them that much credit because I know exactly what they can do, and they're just too, like, for better or worse, they are too chicken shit to do it.
I mean, you're talking to you're talking to the right guy here. You're preaching to the choir about what Hololive fans can do.
Like, it's one of those things where I remember this is very, very vivid because it's a recent talk that she had. Somebody asked Nenichi of Gen 5 from Holo JP whether or not she was going to collab with men. And she was just like, no, that's not what idols do. I'm here. I am a 30... Oh, shit. It's almost been 30 years.
Okay, boomer.
I grew up on idols. I am a boomer.
Yep.
Like,
and I'm gonna reinforce that fact every podcast.
I know, right? And I will reinforce it too. Idols regularly do content with the other sex all the time. This freak out with ENHYPEN having female back dancers is very unheard of. So one of my favorite examples is right now in Japan, the current top #1 idol group is a group by the name of Snowman. One of the very first things they ever did was to create a TV show with AKB48, knowing that AKB48 at the time literally had something called the Johnny's Checklist Circle. Right? Which is a list of conquests by the girls of different Johnny's talents that they slept with. Right? Like, they knew this was happening, and they were just like, you know what, just do it anyways. Like, whatever. Like, you guys sleep with each other all the time. that was their 15 cents, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there being like, idols don't do what? Idols date each other all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's common, but obviously there is a dynamic in the VTubing space that has prohibited that in the past. Look at Russia, I guess. Anyways,
Russia's
I think
special though.
yeah, that was something else.
Yeah.
Mari said I collabed with a boy today. You did. You crossed those gender lines. You collabed with a boy. How could you?
You're an idol VTuber. No. So you gotta be a true idol VTuber and do the oppai manko manko chinko chant. I taught that to some of my friends, and then all of my idol friends were just like, why the fuck do you do this? The oppai manko manko chinko chant, by the way, please don't do this in polite society, is the boobs dick chant.
Yep.
It's an alternative to the Diamond City Lights chant. And if you do that within 5 meters of a Japanese person, they will never talk to you again. Nice. Also very true. I collabed with a boy. He said he was hot and has a nice chest. That is true. A good friend, Mika Akasuka, does have a very nice chest and is very hot. Uki would approve.
Yeah, Uki would approve. 100%. Alright, can we go back to talk about NIJISANJI now?
Yeah, let's go.
Alright.
It's always our favorite topic.
Yeah, because I feel like we do bring this up quite a lot, but it's also like, this time it's kind of relevant. And it's a bit more deep than some of the analysis that I have seen on NIJISANJI recently. I'm going to be blunt. NIJISANJI has a PR problem. Hannah and I have been debating about this in DMs for quite some time. About NIJISANJI losing control of the narrative in the English VTuber Twitter sphere. Which is still a minority of fans, but a very significant portion of fans that you still need to please. And they have most certainly lost some sort of credence and standing here. This doesn't just stem from... I've brought up Nina's graduation post as like just kind of like a thing to have on in the background. I've also got the stuff here with Niji ID graduating 4 more talents. Because there has been a steady trickle out of stuff for NIJISANJI, and there has been almost no positive news or no other stories to kind of counteract
Okay.
the trickle out outside of Koshian, maybe, but that's about it.
I would disagree, but that's also because I live on TikTok. I can't believe I live on TikTok.
How would you disagree?
Okay, so the thing is, there's no positive news unless you are in a space that is dominated by Zoomers and or women. Yeah, I do go into some places that people would not dare. Like, it's that in the guy-dominated... Well, yeah, in the guy-dominated spaces, I think NIJISANJI really suffers from a PR problem. But you go onto TikTok, and it's a completely different ballgame. Because TikTok VTuber sphere is entirely dominated by Shoto and Luxium fans.
Yeah, that's true.
And so to them, the world looks like a very different place.
I would almost argue that it is also the TikTok algorithm serving you your side of things.
Well, I don't just look at what's on my, like, TikTok for you, whatever. I go into the rankings and actually see what's there. Then I look at the comments.
I still believe that when streaming as an audience is still majority male dominated, there is some... So with NIJISANJI, it's more than 50%. No, but like I'm talking like streaming as a whole. And in VTubing, it is still like you still have to, sadly, at this point in time, please the male audience, and they still have significant sway in discourse online, right? And you can't go a post about a NIJISANJI member nowadays without it having an attached level of hate that is not comparable to any other agency.
Okay, but that was always the case. Like, quite frankly, that's always been the case for EN. Where they've never... Okay, so this actually goes into why NIJISANJI... So if you go into JP, all the JP members actually have open marshmallows. It's just a thing that they do. But for NIJISANJI EN, they've never been able to do so. And the talents have hinted at it in the past. But fundamentally, the reason for that is because there's so much hate just directed at NIJISANJI simply for existing that none of the talents have been able to safely open any sort of like AMAs, discourse, whatever. It's actually been quite ridiculous. And it's only gotten worse since Luxium has been out. So I actually would say that there is absolutely no reason why they should give any credence to men at all.
My pushback to that is they have lost control of the narrative regardless.
Oh, I don't disagree with that at all. I don't think it matters.
I think it does. And like, this is something that we've been talking about in DMs for quite some time, and now everyone kind of gets to see it publicly. I do think it matters. I do think it matters. Because in the long term, this is the kind of stuff that can potentially have business impact. And if people see a decline in growth, a decline in growth beyond expectations, and a trickling away of fandom, of viewership, of money, of whatever, that's when people get worried. And when you've got a publicly listed company doing that, that's when like things can change quite rapidly.
But where
in
would
this
that
market.
Trickling come from? Where would the exodus come from, right? Because NIJISANJI's market is fundamentally all female, right?
I mean, not all female. It is more female than other agencies, is it? But what I'm trying to try and get across, which, hold on, let me just get my words right. When the discourse havers in the commentary space for, I guess in the EN space, because this is the only space that I can relate to and I can't speak to anything else, but I still think it's a relevant and prudent point. because it does actually speak to a consciousness of a decent size of the community. That when they turn against an agency in unison, that is a problem. And whether it has impact on the company standing overall, which I think I should prefix with saying it doesn't right now. It could, which is the issue I have. It doesn't right now, though. When you've got everyone super skeptical about everything that happens within the agency, even with members that were previously more well-liked than others, when you've then got people coming out, and you've got leaks abound, when you've got people slowly trickling out, it does pose a PR problem, especially when they have no good news to share otherwise. Like, the one thing that NIJISANJI EN had going for it this year was the AR Live, and they had to cancel that less than 2 weeks after announcing it, which was, in my opinion, a PR disaster. In my opinion, is the biggest PR disaster that NIJISANJI has had this year, because it had knock-on effects.
Yeah. So here is my pushback, right? Before we started the show, we were talking about Mel, right? And I was like, oh, like I was talking to a friend about the Mel scandal, and turns out the person that caused the Mel scandal is still there. And your question was, who's Mel? Right? Like, what was the scandal about?
Yeah.
Right? That was the biggest, and that still remains probably one of the biggest scandals in VTubing to date. In that you had a manager literally abusing their position to sexually harass one of the talents, and he's still there. But no one remembers this. Not a soul.
Yeah.
And this was back when Hololive was just the JP branch. So it was a very, very big deal at the time, and it still remains. Yeah, that guy's still there. And it still remains like one of the biggest challenges for them. But like, nobody remembers it. They didn't do anything different. It's just that it happens to... Yeah, I thought the guy was fired too, but apparently he's still there. But it just happens to be that with enough time, people forget. And that is true of anything. Like, right now, the narrative is that Hololive stood up to mainland China. That is not the case. I was there. They basically told Coco and Hachama to take a forced several months without pay suspension. And only when that did not do anything for them did they finally say, we're going to pull out of China. Right? It's one of those things where with enough time, all of your viewers are going to forget. And there is no reason to subject their talents to the pure vitriol. To your point from before, misogyny is not a problem that is going to go away. No. And a lot of NIJISANJI's problems, fundamentally, like, whether they like it or not, is actually very, very rooted in that.
I feel like, though, that Hololive has a lot of problems that are rooted in the same thing, but don't suffer the same consequences.
Because they are Hololive. And because they act in ways that cater to unicorns. And that is why they will never suffer the same secondary effects.
I still think that NIJISANJI has a better way of dealing with things, though. Like, there is
I definitely agree with you.
The whole crux of where we started this discussion off is when you have two agencies who are very closed off, and you can't get a media story out about them. Yes, I am directly calling you guys out for not doing interview requests. Well, at least NIJISANJI. Hololive is better. Hololive is much better than NIJISANJI in terms of doing interviews and media. But because NIJISANJI PR is absolutely terrible at being able to change the narrative, it leads to it paradoxing into itself. Which is basically what has happened across the last it started in the EN space with Yugo's graduation, and it continued then with the Zion suspension, the AR Live announcement and cancellation, Solen's comments about Wrestle Sanji, and then Zion's termination, and a bunch of other things. And it kind of just it has kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And then now you've got people pointing at Niji Crisis's numbers, which I don't think is a worthwhile thing to point towards, because they're still growing just fine. Doing much better than, I guess, on average than Star's debuts are. And that kind of thing. But it is like, the thing is NIJISANJI have not been able to escape the spiral of stories, whereas Hololive have been. The Solen stuff with Wrestle Sanji, by the way, Mario, is more talking about the lack of support that NIJISANJI has. NIJISANJI talents have.
So, like, you remember that stuff, but on my side of Twitter, both, like, among the female fans and among just, like, the TikTok side of things, right? What we remember starts with Vox's charity stream.
Yeah.
Like, yes, AR sucked. But what we remember is Vox's charity stream, the 1 million celebrations this year, because those came back. That actually hadn't been a thing for a very, very long time. And that fundamentally, like, we had that, and then we had the triple whammy. Well, I am suffering the triple whammy of Mista's merch all coming out. And so for us, like, for the female fan base side of things, that's what we see.
Yeah. And I do agree with that, because, like, I mean, we spoke about it at the top and we're just about to get into it because we're nearing the tail end of things that we have to talk about. Uki's charity stream was great, and the 100 mil merch, the 1 mil merch for Mr. and Fox, amazing. And I'm sure Luca will get the same treatment. And there have been a lot of good news stories around NIJISANJI. The issue is that they definitely do not get the same limelight as literally the most mild amount of good news for the Hololive.
Well, I need
in the general commentary space, and, like, I know why. I can quantify why that is. It is because of who dominates the discourse in terms of these spaces.
Yeah, because, like, cis guys are not going to give NIJISANJI the same pass that Hololive will get ever.
Yeah.
So that's why I just don't think this battle is worth fighting. Because, like, for me personally, as somebody who has seen both Myth, I was there for the Myth debuts, I was there for, like, Last Light's debut, I've seen both branches grow. I just don't know if it's worth fighting. Because unless you fix the crux of the issue, and the crux of the issue is literally this downplaying of the female fan base, you're never going to fix it.
I think as an agency they can still do more to kind of.
I mean, yeah, they can definitely do more.
They definitely should be doing more in the EN space. On the JP side, they're doing fine, in my opinion. They're doing pretty fine. Like, you look at how people reacted to Gundam Murray's suspension and graduation in the JP space, and or even look at something like the ID graduations in the JP space, and everyone is kind of just pretty accepting of it. Like, but the major discourse issue is in the EN space, and that is, I think, partially and maybe even predominantly because of general VTuber fandom. But I also do think that there is a non-insequential part that is of NIJISANJI's own doing, that they are not doing enough in the PR department, that they are not doing enough in the whole managing expectations department, or being seen as doing enough for their talents, that leads to this downward spiral of sentiment in broader VTubing spheres compared to Hololive, which is universally pretty well regarded.
So it's so funny to me that you say that NIJISANJI doesn't do as many interviews as Hololive, because since I read both Japanese, well, I read 3 languages, right? I read Japanese, Korean, and English, and every week I will see a new interview by a NIJISANJI talent, but it's always in a Japanese magazine.
It's always that's the issue though, because
Like
no.
all these EN talents, but they're all talking through an interpreter.
But that's also the issue, is that Hololive has managed to tap into the EN media space. They do interviews in English for publications. NIJISANJI hasn't done that, and I feel like if they did do that, they would have a little bit of a better chance at not being in the spot that they are currently in.
Okay, so on one hand, like as a writer, I agree with you. But if I was their agency person, I would be like, oh fuck no. Like there is no way in hell that I would want to subject my talents to that.
I kind of disagree with that, because it can come with some level of autonomy. Where if I don't think the management should be stepping in and having a say there.
Well,
the kind of PR side of things is, the way that I see it is, they are the epitome of the we have done nothing and we're all out of ideas kind of thing, where they have just done nothing to try and change. And it would be nice to see them try to do something to change. There are positive stories and there are ways of amplifying them, and they can tap into that in the EN market. And if the talents are comfortable with sharing that, then I think they should. And I think they should be the outlet to do that, because currently there isn't.
I can kind of see that.
And that's something that they suffer with.
Yeah, like, I definitely see your point.
This is this is also a very meta discussion between two journalists who want access to agency VTubers.
I may have actually found access at AX, so...
Hey.
TBD.
TBD for me as well.
Like, it's one of those things where I certainly see why NIJISANJI has taken the route that they have. Because the talents have hinted, not on one occasion, but like multiple times, that part of the reason why they are so closed off, particularly in the EN side of things, is because the fan response when Lazulite first started was so vitriolic. Like, there was so much vitriol at the beginning that it was literally breaking the girls down. And that it only became worse after Luxium debuted, because then all of a sudden they were no longer the pure girls, right?
Yeah.
And so like
there is a long-rooted, like, I'm not disputing the long-rooted chain. I just wish they would have.
Yeah.
I just really wish they would try something different.
Like, for me, living in multiple spaces that are dominated by different groups of people.
Yeah.
Like, when I go to FlameCon, which is actually a very, very big convention for the queer community. It's very, very geeky. When I go to FlameCon, all I see is Uki merch. Right? So, like, when you step out of the predominantly cis straight men that control VTuber discourse, and you step out and you, like, look at the different groups of people and what they're talking about,
yeah,
it's almost entirely a different story. Like,
no, I agree.
See the world is extremely different, right?
I agree. And, like, this is something that we noted at the start when we were talking about conventions, where, like, at SMASH, you know, like, maybe, like, it was probably, like, 50-50 between Hololive fan art and NIJISANJI fan art, but I've gone to conventions back in my hometown of Perth, and it would literally be all NIJISANJI, except for, like, maybe one vendor having Hololive merch. It would literally just be all NIJISANJI, though, and it would be all Luxium and
My
Optics.
people.
And I think that's, like, fine, but I also am conscious of the fact of who bears the discourse in the space. And I don't...
Oh, yeah.
And if someone bears the discourse in the space, you kind of have to... Maybe you don't have to respect it, but it is a party that you have to be consciously aware of, lest you end up in a situation like Rushia. Which which Rushia is a complicated situation, and boiling it down to just that is a bit misleading, but that is still that entire situation goes to show the difference of power brokers and how controlling discourse in a space can have effects positive and negative.
Yeah. Like, I think on one hand, I want to say that, and this is actually to Lampy's point that, like, it's changed a bit. The way that I see them working is they literally go straight up to where the majority of the Luxium fans are. Because the thinking is, you know, the atmosphere may be very misogynistic, but the crazy Vox fans will fight you guys off.
and to play into that point, they will not know where those favorable partners are if they don't try. And that is that.
Well, they are
trying.
That's why they're on Bilibili. That's why.
Yeah, but no, like,
that's why you see Folger all over Bilibili.
Yes, and no. Like, it is like, yes, they're trying, but they're not trying for their livers core domestic audience.
Is it really core domestic, man?
I mean, I think so. No, but like, they're not meeting the English-speaking fans. They're not making the English-speaking fans where they are. Basically, is where I'm trying to get to. Because you can do all the great stuff for JP. You can do all the great stuff on Bilibili for your Chinese fans, and I mean, Bilibili was a very significant part of why Luxium blew up. Like, yeah. I would say, actually, no, I would not even exaggerate that Bilibili was the reason Luxium blew up.
I actually wouldn't say that much, because
I would say
Bilibili subscribers are not YouTube subscribers.
But there was that was like the insane leap that they needed to break into the other spaces.
I actually would argue it started with JP. It didn't start with the Chinese fans. If you go all the way back to like the January, February streams, outside of Vox, everybody else was in Japanese. They all needed Japanese mods after a bit, because what happened was Oliver and Utako of JP started introducing Luxium to their JP fanbase, and they introduced them specifically as, hey, like, you know how, like, Togabito and Chrononor really hate it when you guys ship them together? Well, these guys don't care.
Like, which is like...
And so the JP fans blew up. That's where the fan art blew up, and that's when the Bilibili fans descended, right? So, like, all the Asian countries kind of built off of each other, which is why I think they only do interviews in these 3 languages, right?
But
I'll see like an occasional Korean one.
You also yourself have also seen that NIJISANJI has a very large corner of the fan base when it comes to the, I guess, the non-cis white male side of things. Like, but they do actually manage to have a decent amount of influence in that fan base, and there are voices in that fan base that would be willing to conduct some sort of positive messaging for them. And the fact that I don't think they've decided to scrap the kind of messaging in that side of things rather than hone further in on their niche in the market is a little bit of why they are losing a little bit of the kind of discourse, because they're kind of writing it off as a whole and letting the people who would control the narrative regardless control the narrative in a negative way without actually doing anything with potentially favorable partners to try and speak back. It is the same strategy that we talk about in politics, right? When we talk about
I definitely
it is the same,
agree with you on that part.
It's the same strategy where you talk about in politics, where let's boil this down to US politics, right? Where you'll have Democrats who have their favored media partners, and you have Republicans who have their favored media partners, and they will they will ignore what the other media partners are saying, like what the other side's media partners are saying, but completely hone in on their soapboxes, basically, and target messaging through there. That is something that NIJISANJI needs to do, and I know it's something that they need to try to do.
They're doing it. I would argue they're doing it to a limited degree.
I would argue they're not doing it in the EN space, and that's the only space I can relate to.
Like, I definitely see what you're saying when it comes to like the mainstream EN spaces. But again, like I view that mainstream media space, maybe like rightly or wrongly, I kind of write it off as super hostile. And so if I were in that mainstream space, particularly as a mask presenting VTuber, I would not want to be there.
I think it is a complicated issue, and
Yeah.
I mean, it goes to show, hey, we do disagree on things sometimes. But I think this is like it is this is the kind of productive conversation that I think needs to be had in the space of like it goes to show. I think this conversation about does NIJISANJI have a PR problem, and the answer being well, it's complicated, is good because I think that there is a lot to talk about in terms of, you know, is it a NIJISANJI problem or is it a broader fan base problem? Because I have always been one to say this, a lot of VTubing's problem stems from its fan base, and not actually from the people making content. I still think like every agency can do more in this regard, and you're talking to the conversation between us here is between two people with very heavy conflicts of interest and very heavy biases in this space, where we are always going to lean towards saying, give us the exclusive interviews. We will say nice things about your talents. But I think that is something that Hololive genuinely taps into in the EN space, and something that NIJISANJI has struggled to tap into in the EN space.
Well, do they? They only talk to Silicon Arrow, right?
For now.
Like,
no comment.
They talk to Silicon Arrow, and
but it's still something. Like, they have found their media partner. They have found their voice box, like the Democrats found CNN, right? And if that's their media partner and that's their voice box, then they have found it. And that is fine. NIJISANJI has not found that yet, and I think they need to.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm more getting to.
We shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. And both of us are like, yes, eyebrow wiggling. Watch this space.
We shall see.
We shall see about that. All right, I think that ends that discussion because, oh my god, that was like half an hour. When we get started on media, we don't stop.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of small topics to wrap up the podcast for you guys. The first one being the Small VTuber Awards, or the Hidden Gem Awards, as they are called, which kind of I wanted to highlight at the end of the podcast here, because small VTubers. Oh, first of all, vote for Mario DeCinco, who is in Twitch chat. She's nominated for Most Innovative, I think. I can't remember the exact category. Something like that.
Such a good award. I voted for Maru.
Yeah, I think something like, most unique content. Close enough. Vote for her and her wonderful Gundam building streams. Also watch this space. And so the Small VTuber Awards kind of comes as an answer to the bigger streaming awards like your Streamer Awards and Streamies, plus the VTuber-centric awards like the VTuber Awards run by Phillian and Mythic, plus whatever Takahata is planning next month, plus whatever Iron Mouse is planning for herself and has been planning for quite some time, as an answer to kind of highlight the small VTubers. I don't want to add too much more to the conversation than what I've just said. I just really wanted to shine a light on this, and if you are interested in listening to the end, if you've gotten this far in the podcast and you're interested, a link to the article will be in the description of the YouTube video that goes out on this, where you can read more for yourself. You can go and vote until July 20. And it also goes to touch on a few tropes in VTubing, which I might just ask you about here, Hannah, so that you have something to say here, is the smaller VTubers and the smaller content creators are where you'll find the most innovative content. And so by supporting these guys and looking into these guys before they blow up, then you'll be able to see like the next generation, because a lot of the every single big VTuber that you see nowadays was once upon a time a small VTuber, like, and then they break out because they do innovative things. They are someone like Onigiri with the cooking streams. They have their own little niches in ASMR, like Cinder. Like, that is how people grow in this space. And so by looking at these awards and looking at the people in them and giving them the respect and commendation that they deserve, you kind of get to see what the future of VTubing looks like. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on the kind of small VTuber awards and like highlighting smaller streamers in the space?
Honestly, like, I kind of wish... Okay, so I didn't know much about a lot of the other ones, right? But I kind of wish
that's
when
kind
they
of
do
the
a
joy.
presentation...
That's kind of the joy of it.
Yeah. Like, I kind of wish they had a clip compilation for each one.
I think they will.
Right.
Bearing in mind, this entire award
really...
show... Bearing in mind, this entire award show is being run by one person.
Yeah.
It is a one-person team.
Literally kudos to them.
Kudos to
Petri.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, it was... First off, this is an amazing idea. But also, I really hope that when they release the final... I don't care who... Like, yes, vote for Maru, but also, like, I don't really care who wins. I just want to watch all of them, right? Like, I really hope a couple of Clippers, because Clippers, I had said this before and I will say this again. Clippers are the unsung heroes of this community. Like, YouTube stopped monetizing them. But fundamentally, the fact that this person went out, found all these people, and if you actually vote through it, there's a section when you vote for, like, the best singer. You can actually listen to every single person. And I was like, this is actually really cool. So I'm just like, good job.
Yeah.
For reals.
Yeah. It is a, yeah. Anyways, the show is happening sometime soon. I don't know when.
Watch it.
So
Watch
yeah,
it.
when it's on,
them.
when it's on, you'll hear about it because we'll probably talk about it.
Yeah.
And the
but
last
also
thing,
support them. They're amazing.
Yeah. And the last thing that we'll touch on, and we have alluded to it a couple times through the podcast, is Yuki VIOLETA's Pride Month charity stream for the Human Rights Campaign, which raised nearly 35,000 USD for charity, and I think is one of the most influential events in EN VTubing this year, especially so far. I'm
gonna bring out my soapbox right now.
All right, this is your time for the soap.
This is my time.
Can you soapbox while I go AFK for like 30 seconds, and I'll catch up and I'll know exactly where you are.
Okay, so the portion starts exactly around like 5 minutes, lasts until 1 hour and 15 minutes in. Everyone should watch this part. I am extremely appreciative to every single one of Uki's like clippers who decided not to clip this section because it should be listened to in its entirety. That was the best hour I have ever spent on a fucking stream in my life. And you're talking to someone who has just found out the power of affirmative streams. Yes, it was literally so fucking good, but also, like, it is the type of stream that you would never normally hear outside of, like, I think the closest that I've ever gotten to hearing something like that was on a deliberately political stream. And it was a lot more impactful because Uki was talking about a personal experience that they went through, as opposed to normally when people are talking about politics, they'll like interview somebody else and they'll ask about their experiences and just kind of talk about it. Whereas Uki was very much talking about their own experiences and the things that they had to go through, and being able to explain it in a way that I thought was like extremely refreshing. That was amazing. Everyone should listen to it.
Yeah.
So yes, that was the best stream. Like year to date, my vote for best stream, Uki VIOLETA's charity stream, first hour. Go watch it.
It does, and I'm sure that you've brought it up, and I'll probably just be repeating. It does touch on a lot of important points about representation in the VTubing space, and what this all goes to show is that diverse representation in the VTubing space is important, is powerful, And I think I spoke about this to someone today. It's profitable, like catering to diverse audiences, and is a smart business strategy. And if you have a talent who is willing to openly speak up and stand proud for their identity, that should be leveraged and not chastised. And I think there was some very powerful remarks in Uki's stream more broadly. I loved all of his questions to all the other Niji livers that came in about what's your gay experience.
You just seeing like, being friends with you.
But
Shuki moment.
Yeah.
Shuki moments.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to say about NIJISANJI allowing their talent to do a show like this, a stream like this. And as much as we just spent half an hour talking about NIJISANJI not being able to control the discourse, this is also an example for me of why they have so much power and ability to do so, because they do as an agency and as their talents individually they do individually great things. And I hope to see that leveraged more, because I don't remember seeing anyone mentioning Uki's charity stream in commentary circles, and that's a little bit discouraging.
So I know Penumbra mentioned it a little bit, but I think the reason why it was powerful for me, I think is something that people wouldn't recognize unless you have been following entertainers and celebrities for a long time, which is, this is not commentary you normally ever see.
Yeah.
Even in the United States, you just don't hear people talk like this, ever.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to really say on this stream. It is a good stream. Please go back and watch the VOD, especially the first hour, like Hannah said. It's got a lot of powerful points about the importance of representation in content creation, and that's something that I think NIJISANJI does well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that about wraps us up. I don't know. We've been going for nearly 2 hours, which is one of the longest episodes we've had so far.